Welcome to Forbidden Texts. What you are about to see may shock you. It may surprise you, but will definitely challenge everything you thought you knew. Stick around until the end to discover the forbidden knowledge that they don't want you to have.
What if I told you that the worst pain you've ever felt, the crushing despair, the unbearable loneliness, the feeling that your entire life is falling apart, is actually happening for you, not to you? That the reason behind it is something so profound, so transformative, that if you knew the truth, you'd see your suffering in a completely different light. You've been told that spiritual awakening is about love, light, and bliss. But no one warns you about this. No one tells you that before the enlightenment comes the darkness. Before the rebirth, something in you must die. And that death, it feels like losing everything. Welcome to Forbidden Texts, where we explore ancient knowledge and forgotten wisdom. There's a reason why so many great spiritual teachers, from Buddha to Jesus, from Rumi to Carl Jung, spoke about this experience. But do you actually know what it means? It's not just sadness. It's not just depression. It's a total collapse of identity. The life you built, the beliefs you held, the person you thought you were, it all starts crumbling. And the more you fight it, the deeper you sink. But here's what no one tells you. This is not just random suffering. It's a calculated dismantling of everything that is not you. The false self, the conditioned ego, the illusions you've carried since birth, all of it is being stripped away. And what's left after the destruction? That's what we're going to uncover. Because if you understand why this happens, if you know the real reason behind it, you'll see the pain for what it truly is. Not a punishment, but a passage. A test designed to burn away the illusions and reveal something you never imagined possible. And by the time we're done, you'll know exactly why this is happening to you. Why you feel lost. Why nothing makes sense anymore. And most importantly, why this is the most important moment of your spiritual journey. It's a spiritual annihilation. Imagine waking up one day and realizing that everything you believed about yourself, your life, and even reality itself was a lie. That's what this is. It's a moment, sometimes stretched over weeks, months, even years, where the very foundation of your existence begins to crack. And when it does not go quietly. This is why people say it feels like dying. Because, in a way, it is. But where does this term even come from? The dark night of the soul isn't some modern self-help phrase. It dates back to the 16th century, to a mystic named Saint John of the Cross. He wrote a poem describing a journey through an unbearable darkness, where everything was stripped away, leaving only an empty, agonizing void. A void so deep, so relentless, that even God felt absent. Centuries later, Carl Jung would call it the shadow self-emerging, the death of the old identity. In Buddhism, they call it the dissolution of the ego. Jesus disappearing into the desert for 40 days. Buddha sitting under the Bodhi tree, tormented by his own mind. Lao Tzu abandoning civilization, walking away from everything. They didn't just wake up one day enlightened. They first had to lose themselves completely. And here's where it gets interesting. This experience isn't reserved for saints or prophets. It happens to ordinary people. Right now, across the world, millions are going through it. And yet, almost no one talks about it. Because it's terrifying, it's isolating. And the worst part, it makes you question everything. Why am I here? Why does nothing make sense anymore? Am I losing my mind? But what if I told you there's a reason for all of this? that this darkness you're drowning in has a purpose, one so profound, so shocking, that once you understand it, you'll never look at suffering the same way again. We're about to go deeper, and by the time you hear what's really going on, you'll never see your pain the same way again. You want to know why this is happening to you? The truth is more unsettling than you think. This isn't just some random depression. It's not just one of those phases. You are being broken apart on purpose. And the reason? Your ego is dying. Right now, your mind is fighting for its survival. And it's losing. For your entire life, you've been conditioned to believe a certain story about yourself. You were given a name, a set of beliefs, a role to play. You build your identity around external things, your job, your relationships, your achievements. But here's the problem. None of that was ever you. And deep down, something inside you knows it. So what happens when the soul decides it's time to wake up? When the illusions have to be shattered, the ego panics. It resists. And that's what makes this process so brutal. You don't just lose things. You lose who you thought you were. And here's what no one tells you. The harder you fight it, the worse it gets. The ego will do anything to hold on. It will convince you that you're losing your mind, that you're broken, that you need to fix this to get back to who you used to be. But there's nothing to fix. There's no going back. This is not a breakdown. It's a breakthrough. And if you can understand what's really happening, if you can surrender to it instead of resisting, you'll discover something most people never do. Because beyond this darkness, beyond this suffering, beyond the destruction of the ego, there is something waiting for you. And once you see it, you'll understand why this had to happen first. How do you know if you're in the dark night of the soul? It's not just feeling sad. It's not just being lost. This is something deeper. You wake up, and the world feels unreal. Nothing makes sense anymore. Your career, your relationships, your passions, they used to give you meaning. Now, they feel empty, pointless, like they belong to someone else. You start questioning everything. Why am I here? What is the point of any of this? Who am I? And the answers don't come. Instead, you feel like you're sinking. It's like a spiritual free fall. No ground beneath you, no direction, no sense of self to hold on to.
A quick message. This space has become something truly special for many of us. A community of people on a shared journey of spiritual growth, healing, and awakening. Your comments and stories inspire me every day, and it's clear there's so much more we can create together, especially since this path can feel lonely at times. That's why we've created a spiritual space on Patreon, a sanctuary for deeper connection, exclusive content, and meaningful conversations with others from this channel who share your journey. Together, we can build something uplifting, authentic, and spiritually powerful. If this resonates with you and you'd like to be part of something bigger, whatever you're going through, you'll find the link in the description or pinned in the comments. Your membership not only helps support the channel, but also helps grow this beautiful community. Let's create something amazing together.
The beliefs that once guided you now feel like lies. The things that once felt real now seem like illusions. And the worst part, no one understands. You try to explain, but the words don't come out right. You say you feel lost, and they tell you to cheer up or be grateful. They don't realize you're not just having a bad day. You're dissolving. You feel alone. Completely, terrifyingly alone. A collapse. A void. It's the space where the old self dies, where the illusions are stripped away, where the real you begins to emerge. But in order to get there, you have to walk through the darkness first. And this is where most people get stuck. They don't realize that the suffering isn't random. It's not happening to them. It's happening for them. Because buried underneath all this pain is something hidden. Something that has been waiting for you all along. And if you knew what it was, if you could see what was coming next, you'd understand why every second of this suffering is worth it. What if I told you that this suffering, the unbearable emptiness, the feeling of losing everything, is actually the doorway to something you can't even imagine yet? Right now, it feels like you're trapped in the dark. Like everything you once held onto is being stripped away, leaving you with nothing. And it's terrifying. But what if that nothing isn't emptiness at all? What if it's freedom? Because here's the truth that no one talks about. The dark night of the soul isn't a punishment. They were illusions being burned away. This is the hidden gift inside the darkness. It shows you what was never truly yours to begin with. Think about it. Before this started, you had a life that felt stable, predictable. But how much of it was really you? How much of it was built on fear, on societal expectations, on unconscious programming that told you who you should be instead of who you actually are? That's why this is happening. Not to destroy you, but to set you free. Free from the false self. Free from the need for external validation. Free from the illusion that happiness comes from outside of you. And yes, it feels brutal. Because letting go of everything you once identified with feels like dying. But what's really dying is the version of you that was never real. And what comes after that? A deep, unshakable knowing. The kind of clarity that makes fear irrelevant. That makes suffering meaningless. That reveals the truth that was hidden beneath the pain all along. And once you see it, once you feel it, you'll understand why every second of this darkness was necessary. Because on the other side of this suffering is something so powerful, so life-changing, that when it finally happens, you'll never be the same again. But how do you get through it? Nothing brings relief. No amount of distraction, no amount of searching for answers, no amount of trying to fix yourself seems to work. That's because this isn't something you fix. It's something you go through. And the only way out is surrender. That's the secret no one tells you. The more you fight this process, the more painful it becomes. Because what you're fighting isn't the darkness, it's your own transformation. Stop trying to get back to normal. Stop trying to understand everything. This isn't meant to make sense to your logical mind. The part of you that wants control is the part that's dying. Let it go. Second, let yourself feel. The emotions that are rising up, grief, fear, rage, despair, they're not here to destroy you. They're here to be released. For years, you've buried these feelings under distractions, relationships, achievements. Now, there's nowhere left to hide. So feel them. Cry. Scream. Write. Do whatever it takes, but don't suppress them. Third, find stillness. You won't find answers in the outside world. Not in books, not in YouTube videos, not in advice from people who have never walked this path. The answers are inside you. Meditation, solitude, silence. These are not just spiritual cliches. Every single person who has ever woken up, every enlightened being, every great spiritual teacher, they have all walked through this fire. No one reaches the other side without first losing themselves in the dark. And if you can hold on, if you can surrender to this process instead of fighting it, you will see what they saw. Because the darkness doesn't last forever. And what's waiting for you on the other side, that's what changes everything. Most people never make it this far. They hit the darkness, feel the ground collapse beneath them, and they do everything in their power to run back to safety. Back to the familiar. Back to the illusions that once made them feel secure. But you're still here. And that means something. It means you're not here to live an ordinary life. You're not here to stay asleep, trapped in a cycle of distractions and surface-level existence. No, something inside you is forcing you to wake up, even if it hurts. And now, you're at the turning point. Space to rebuild. Space to become something new. Space to finally, fully, see. And what you see is this: you were never broken. You were never lost. The real you, the part of you that exists beyond the stories, beyond the trauma, beyond the conditioning, has always been there, waiting. Waiting for the illusions to fall away. Waiting for you to stop seeking answers outside of yourself. Waiting for you to finally, fully, step into your truth. Because here's the final secret: the dark night of the soul isn't the end. It's the beginning. It's the threshold between who you were taught to be and who you actually are. And once you cross it, once you come out on the other side, you don't just return to life. You see it with new eyes. Everything feels different because you are different. There's a stillness inside you now, an awareness that nothing external can shake. The fear that once controlled you, and now you're ready. Ready to live, not from fear, not from ego, but from something deeper, something unshakable, something real. This is the rebirth. And the only question left is, what will you do with it?